We will start in like 5 minutes. If you guys could just get your breakfast, and then we will begin.
No.
I'm just trying to get it fixed out there. No, I was just making sure that they had it. Bring it up. I never seen it.
How are you? Good. How are you? Good.
We tell them, like, what? Good. Our folks are amazing.
Right, but if you get them here,
Hey, Jen.
You know that.
Our presentation will begin in a few moments. Breakfast is being served.
Guys, we're going to go ahead and start because we're running a little late. So continue to serve yourself. If you could just kind of keep your ears out and listen. So serve yourself quietly so that we can get the program started. If you that have served yourselves can go ahead and take a seat.
I think it's a good time. I mean, yeah, let's get it. Let's start because
Okay.
we have a lot to cover today, guys.
So our first guest we brought up unexpectedly last night. We attended an event. Our governmental affairs and our GEPAR took an initiative on the UMC. I just lost my train of thought of what it's called. The bond. Certificate of obligation. It came to me. Okay, so GEPAR has taken a stance on the certificate of obligation with UMC. We're not saying we are against the issue at all. What we're saying is, as GEPAR, that we feel it needs to go to the voters. We think that it's very important that the voters have a choice and that the voters get to decide whether they want this bond or not. With that, in order to even have a chance at getting it to the voters, we need 25,000 signatures. And if you guys can just do me a favor and kind of keep at a whisper while you're getting your food. So with that, I have invited Brenda with Libre Initiative, and she's going to come up and give you a really quick spiel. And she does have some paperwork, and we can get some signatures. That would be amazing. So if you'll be so kind as to welcome her up.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brenda, like Ms. York said already. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure that she gave me this space to speak today. So pretty much what the Libre Initiative is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. As you all know, UMC is trying to expand, and the vision is beautiful, and we're not against it. The only thing that we would like to know, we're trying to put it in the ballot, is to give the voter the right to choose if they want this project or not. The certificate of obligation is for $346 million, but it can go up to $400 million. The thing is, with inflation and interest rates, we're looking at a $563 million that is going to be in property taxes. Not only that, those taxes are going to be paid till 2047. So that's why we feel it's super important for the voters to have the right to choose if they're ready for this or not. So we've been knocking on doors endlessly, day and night, doing events, being on the rain for the past 3 weeks and a half. And we have till September 9th to collect the 25,000 signatures. Our goal is to collect the 30K in case they reject some signatures. The catch to this is you must be a registered voter in order for this to be valid, your signature to be valid. So the Libre Initiative would truly appreciate your support if you can help us on this cause. I know Ms. Stephanie is going to pass some of the forms, and it would be such a support for us because our main goal at the end of the day is to empower our community. Thank you.
Did you tell them? So we'll be passing these out right now before they leave. They'll go down the aisles. And if you guys are in agreement, if you could please sign this, that would really help us a lot. Thank you guys for coming last minute. I appreciate it. So today's breakfast is brought to you by Mundo, and I am going to have Isabel come up and do the introduction. But Mundo, thank you. This wouldn't be possible without you. You're a pillar in our community, in our real estate community. You have stood by us through so many events, not just through this. You are there for us whenever we need anything. Our Chihuahuas game, everything. You're a supporter of Tree Pack, and I just want to thank you. So Isabel will give the proper introduction.
I think you covered it. So all I can add to that is that I am very grateful that he does do all that he does for us. I can also say that I've known him for a very, very long time, and we are very grateful for all that he does. I know that sometimes we have to twist his arm, and it's painful to do all that we ask him to do. So I think he's going to say more of what Everest Homes is all about. So, Edmundo? Well, you know what? I want to add to it. So, growing up, he was our quarterback, right? And he's been president of the Builders Association not once, but twice. He's also been 2018 Builder of the Year. So he loves what he does. And he had a heart attack doing it too much. So now he decided that he was going to start doing custom homes just for his buyers. And so he loves what he does now, and we're trying very hard, me and the wonderful Jennifer Stroviescas, if you can come up too. We're trying very hard to not let him have another heart attack, guys. We're doing our best. Here you go. Thank you.
Well, having them too is not going to prevent anything. So who's Everest Homes? I'm a custom home builder. And when I say, can everybody hear me okay? No? Okay. So who's Everest Homes? It's me. I'm Everest Homes. What do? We build custom homes. And when I say custom, that's in every single detail. You deal only with me when you're in the building process, in the design process. Jennifer and Isabel do a fantastic job in marketing me, representing me. They do such a great job. I don't carry business cards. I say, talk to them, because they're so good at it. And when you're dealing with me, you get my 26 years plus experience. I've been doing this for a long time. You get my ideas, my innovation. You get everything. So that's who I am. I have a slide here, and I'm just going to talk through it. Like I said, we're one of a kind. I don't have any standard floor plans. I have built other floor plans that you can see, your customers can see, but it would change it because I'm not going to build the same house over and over again. I work with my customer directly, 100% directly with them. We take some details, something I'm very proud of that people can see, because you can't see the quality of work that I do behind the walls. But if you look at my cabinets, that's going to reflect on everything else we do. They are solid wood. We're calling them lifetime cabinets because they do last you a lifetime. We do all the installation. We do the spray foam installation only. And our whole house is engineered. And I won't go into that details, but I'm talking from the ground up, everything is engineered. So here's that all the information. I need everybody put your forks down, okay? We pay 4% commission to the selling agent, okay? So that brings me up to the next, what I think you really want to hear. So how stable is our new home market? It's not stable. Why? Because we don't have our prices stable. They're not stable. Our labor market is not stable. Our materials are not stable. Right now, we're waiting 16 weeks for windows. Okay, we've had 4 price increases on windows in the past year. Labor, we don't have the labor. It's not like we don't have A lot of it, we have some of it, we don't have labor. That's just the truth. People don't want to do what we do anymore, right? Kids nowadays, they want to be behind a computer or a phone, and that's where they want to work. I mean, that's just a reality. Construction times are taking a lot longer than they used to. So why am I offering 4% commission? Because I don't do any marketing, right? I'm not gonna go spend money on somebody else when historically, and this is historically before 2 years ago, okay? So don't quote me on this, on what's happening now. I'm gonna say it's even more now. But 60% of home sales in El Paso are done by you all, by realtors, right? So I'm gonna put myself behind you guys, right? Because you guys are the important ones. So pricing is changing. Pricing will not be consistent from one builder to another because their products are different. What I will tell you is I will not be the cheapest, but your customer's going to have the best value. Okay? That's all I have. Isabel?
There's so much to say.
There is, but we've got very important people behind us.
So I agree. With that being said, can I get an applause for our diamond sponsor, Everest Homes? Thank you very much. Okay, so are you guys all ready? Everybody ate? How is the food? Good. So let's get an applause for him. Yay. The pozole is off the hook. If you haven't had it, I'm sure there's still some more. Is there still some more? Okay. Yes. Okay. The pozole is the best. Yes. Oh my goodness. The pozole is the best. We are so honored to have the guests that we have here today. We have a new guest, Ms. Cassandra from District 3, which you're going to be hearing from. We're so excited for everything that she has coming to District 3. We have our own Isabel Salcido. She is a realtor and also running for District 5. And then we have the city manager, Tommy Gonzales. Always a pleasure to have him. And he has so much information for us that I am just going to let him take over. And I don't know if we need Ernesto up here to help you set up. He'll be right up. And then, okay. And then you have another microphone, right?
Yeah, it's right here.
Okay, yeah. Oh, you know.
And then your presentation is right here.
You are? Okay. Here. I think I broke this thing or it fell here. No, I don't. I'm fine. I can just use the. So good morning, everyone. How are y'all? Good. Thank y'all for having us here this morning. I'm very honored to be here with Ms. Hernandez from District 3 and Ms. Salcido from District 5. I know that there were some folks that were asking me some questions. I think that this presentation will answer a lot of questions that some of you were asking me, and in terms of what we've been doing over the last several years since we've had a strategic plan in place. So what I want to cover is these three areas here. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hernandez on the financial focus, as well as Ms. Salcido, and we'll kind of trade off in terms of making commentary there. And we'll leave some time at the end for some questions if you have any, so y'all can ask us whatever you want to ask us in terms of things we've presented. Now, we have a pretty large organization, the city of El Paso. We have a $1.2 billion budget that is comprised of all the departments. Now, the department or the section that you mostly hear about is the property tax portion of it. That's the general fund, and that encompasses things like police, fire, libraries, parks, things of that nature. When we talk about all funds, Sun Metro is part of that $1.2 billion, and that's funded through sales tax. And through the Federal Transit Administration, the way that's set up is you put either a half a penny or a full penny for transit operations. We only have half a penny. We're one of the few cities that only has half a penny for transit. Most cities have an entire penny for transit operations. The reason that happened, just give you a little bit of history, back in the 80s, the other half a penny went to the county. So that's collected by the county. About 95% of that comes from you within the city that goes to the county. And then they spend a lot of those dollars outside of the city limits. That happened in the 80s. I'm telling you that just from a history standpoint and contextually, so that you know from a financial standpoint, we're kind of hamstrung with respect to when you look at most cities and they have their full complement of revenues. We don't have our full complement of revenues. That's one example of it. And so it's important that when you run a city, when you manage, when you lead a city, you have to know about things like that so that you can like raise the red flag and tell the council, hey, you don't want that to happen, because $55 million a year is going somewhere else instead of us collecting it here and going towards things like streets, perhaps. I think that's been something that's been a huge priority and has been neglected for decades. And so this council has been very dedicated to being very aggressive with their policies to fund a lot of streets. And I'm going to talk to you about how many streets we've done since we put in the strategic plan. That's one example of that. So the $1.2 billion that we manage, that's just for operations. There's about another $1 billion of capital improvements. And those capital improvements have come from the 2012 package that you voted on, other packages that the council's put together for streets, and then the 2019 package that was approved by the public for the police and fire public safety improvements, some of which have gone in areas that have been ignored in the past, like the east side. We'll talk about that later in the presentation as well. And so then we also have a bond election coming up in November that you'll get to vote for, that 90% of it is for streets. I'll repeat, 90% of it is for streets. And so 8% of that 100% that you'll get to vote for is for parks. It includes an all abilities playground, as well as some improvements like shade covers in some of the parks that are mostly frequented by the public and has a lot of traffic, and we need to put more shade covers there and more improvements in those kind of parks that get used quite a bit. And then the last item on there, again, they're all separated, because I know that we've committed to being very upfront with the public and telling them this is what you're voting for so that there's no confusion. The third aspect is the climate action strategy. It's about $5.2 million. Some of that money will go towards things like solar items, like solarizing some of the street lights, maybe making a facility more efficient so it doesn't have to depend so much on the energy costs with the electric company, so they reduce the cost for those facilities. So it'll go for things like that and a plan. And there's a lot of dollars at the federal level, and I'll talk about that in the presentation. There's a lot of dollars at the federal level that the council's been very steadfast about telling us to focus on getting grant dollars. We've gotten quite a bit of grant dollars already, some of them that are competitive in nature. And we are also competing for an EDA grant, a $100 million grant that we were one of 60 cities that have been narrowed down to 22. We're still in the hunt, and we're expecting some good news on that pretty in the near future, rather. And when we do hear about that, that money will go towards advanced manufacturing that we're focused on at the airport. So that'll be a big shot in the arm in terms of what we're going to be doing there. Now, I mentioned a $1.2 billion operating fund that I'm in charge of through the council, and the $1 billion of capital improvements. So when people ask, what do I do? That's part of what I do. We have almost 7,000 individuals, 7,000 souls at the organization that we lead here at the city of El Paso. So it's a pretty big organization. We're one of the top 5 employers in the city. We're the 4th top employer in the city of El Paso. So when you have an organization of that size, you have to ask yourself, how do you lead that? Well, this is the system that we use. Having a good plan in place, being able to focus on our people and the training and development of our people. In 2014, we didn't have a robust training plan for our organization, and now we do. And some of that training includes Lean Six Sigma training, and that's where the process improvements is important. That's the third aspect of what we do, and then we have the results to show people what we do with those kinds of training opportunities for our employees. Let me give you some examples of some of those improvements that we've done. And we've got a lot more that need to get done, obviously. But Lean Six Sigma, what it does is it eliminates waste and it standardizes deviation. And what that means is if you got 4 people in a department, one of them doing 100 things, another one's doing 75, one's doing 50, another one's doing 25, who's doing more of the work? How many? Who? The 75? Do you think the 75? Well, the answer is you don't know because you haven't process mapped the thing. You haven't been able to determine who's doing what and are they doing the right thing? And are they doing something like the one that's doing 100 things? Are they doing 90 things that's not important to anybody in the organization, but just important to them? There might only be doing 10 things that's germane to the job. The one that's doing 25 might be doing 25 things that has nothing to do with the job. The one that's doing 50 might be doing 40 things that are significant to the job. When you process map the whole thing, you find out who's doing what they're supposed to be doing when you have a strategic plan, and you map that all together. So when you do that work, you find out they should be doing 20 things a piece. So if somebody leaves, well, you don't have to hire someone else. Because before, remember, somebody was doing 75. So if they complain and say, well, I'm doing too much work. Well, what do you mean you're doing too much work? You used to be doing 75 things. Now you're only doing 20 things or the right things. So we can add 20 more things to that. And you can all do 40 things. And we don't have to hire a fourth person. So that's an example of that. And it standardizes that deviation. And the deviation comes from the 25, 50, 75, 100. It's like this. It's not all the same. And so that's what standardizing deviation means. So that being said, we've taken that methodology and used that to improve our services. Case in point, we used to do 12,000 potholes a year. Now we do over 75,000 potholes a year. That's something that went through Lean Six Sigma. Now, a couple of things for a lot of smart people that are in the audience, because I know you're all very smart. It's a good thing that we went from 12 to 75,000 pothole repairs, but it also tells you we have a problem with streets, doesn't it? If you're doing that many pothole repairs. So that's the reason why the council, policy-wise, has been focused on being very aggressive with improvements on streets. I'll give you a couple other examples. We used to have the fire department drive from where they're at in the 36 locations throughout the city, all the way out to the fleet department. That's the garage, to do just general maintenance. Now, this is a big city. We have 243 square miles that you got to traverse to go from one end to the other, right? Sometimes it takes an hour to get from one end to the next, and sometimes an hour and a half if there's traffic, right? So you all know that, and I know that very well. I haven't been here for over eight years. So that being said, what we did a Lean Six Sigma project. Well, now, instead of it taking a day and a half for that fire truck to get general maintenance, now it takes an hour and a half. You're like, well, how the heck did you do that? Well, the fleet department goes out to the fire department. How does that help you in terms of direct services? Well, we don't have to hire overtime. That vehicle's not out of service. You get better response times. You save money because those vehicles use up gas quite a bit. Those big fire trucks, that one gallon, 2 miles a gallon. And then with the prices going up, that's quite a bit of money, right? So it doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of things like that we were doing. And some we still do that we still have to get to that don't make any sense. Not one bit of sense. Irrigation repair used to take a day and a half. Now it takes less than 2 hours. Water's kind of important around here, right? So when you have a geyser, a water irrigation that's not all, you call the Parks Department. Now it gets taken care of in less than 2 hours instead of a day and a half. So that's what I mean by having a plan, focusing on your people and training them, having processes, and then getting that kind of performance. So that might seem simple. And it is, but it wasn't being done. Okay. And then also it's something that you have to train 6,000 plus people on, right? So they get more efficient. They get leaner and meaner in terms of how they do things. So our governance system is a council form of government is what I like to call it. It's called a council manager form of government, but it's a council form of government. It means that all 8 of the people are in charge of our governance structure, not just one person. And you want more people in charge of a governance system because when you go through changing laws, changing rules, and changing things like building standards that you are very familiar with, you want 8 people in that governance structure looking at that. You don't just want one person, right? You want a larger group of folks looking at that. So that's what they do. The council looks at policy. They look at how to make changes to policy, and they ask me to execute it. Now, I'm going to turn it over to them and see if they have anything they want to add with regard to the governance structure relative to what the council.
Was there another slide, Tommy?
Yes, there is.
I just wanted to give a quick welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Isabel, Jackie, for the honor of letting us speak to you all today. I've done quite of extensive research on this matter, did all my education at UTEP as it relates to this form of government. I wholeheartedly believe that this is the best form of government. The other form of government would be a strong mayor form of government. We have seen extreme obstacles over the decades. In the 1950s, we were one of the most vibrant and greatest economies in the nation. We had 130,000 population then. In 10 years, we doubled the population in the 60s. That is when you saw mass development across the country and across El Paso. But what we didn't have was a plan on how to develop. So now you have streets that are poorly designed. You don't have sidewalks. You don't have curbs and gutters. There was no real significant process in how you outlay a community and how you plan for development. And that's why we see what we're seeing today, this mass sprawling in the far east, the far west, and the northeast. This form of government creates not only a professional administration, but it holds your council accountable so that we can hold your city manager accountable. So everyone has this like false narrative or misconceptions. Mr. Gonzales makes all the decisions. Your city manager makes all the decisions. The role of a city manager is to take city council's policy directives, budget directives, and then the role of a city manager is to implement and execute that with the greatest amount of achieved savings possible. So I'm certainly in support of it, but as members of council, there's 8 of us and then there's the mayor. The mayor's role is very ceremonial in nature. Your members of council, by majority, is who sets all of policy, all of budgetary requests, as well as any ordinance or laws or any municipal codes. That is the function of your city council. By city charter, I'm only required to attend city council meetings. I'm only required to be a certain age and be a contributing member of the economy, making sure I'm paying my taxes on time. And then also as a city council representative, you have to be a registered voter and be able to vote in the district that you live in. So there are very bare minimum requirements for your city representatives. And also the mayor has its own requirements. But what saddens me the most is the lack of voter participation in our community. Our election outcomes are less than, 4%, 5% of total registered voters. We have in the county over 800,000 voters. Only half of them are registered. And then only 4% of those that are registered come out and vote. But we are your fiduciary persons in council that are making multi-million, billion-dollar decisions. But some of y'all have more followers on TikTok than I have votes to be in office. That's problematic in our community today. So this form of government works, but we need a constituency that is more involved in everyday civic engagement and in your government, because we are making pretty significant decisions, but there's not a lot of participation in the community. Do you want to add?
Yes, I'll just kind of add a little bit more. Again, good morning. Thank you so much for having us here. We appreciate to be able to share more information. I would have to say this organization is the most informed. And so it's good that you guys are always seeking to get more information to be the most informed and out there to inform the community. But just to add on this, I think the city council, city manager form of government, it basically professionalizes the position in a sense, because when you're talking about long-term visions, you need to have something that's consistent. So a city manager will be an employee, not a contractor that is hired by this council, that we create a strategic plan and he continues to execute whether councils come in and go. So that way we can really truly see the fruit. I have to really speak on this because I got to see the really grunt of it, and you all did as the realtors. District 5, I bought my home when I was 20 years old. I got to see the building, the massive sprawl that happened, building codes that weren't addressing things that allowed it to grow the way it did, not allowing the amenities that we currently need, right? Like trees. A lot of these developers did get a chance to I guess, bypass certain things that are standards to what we want to offer our people. And so with a strategic plan and now what you have deployed, I definitely want to continue to address those needs and make sure that we're getting our fair share in our area. But when you don't have a master plan and you don't have a strategic plan and somebody that's consistent, then you lose that. So you always have new administrations that are coming with new ideas and starting all over again. And so we don't see the product, we don't see the fruit. So I definitely think that I definitely subscribe to this. More votes, more opinions, and me as District 5, I fight for our district. We're still growing, and I will continue to build District 5 in the most responsible way and to get what we need in that area. So that's it.
So they made some really, really good points. I mentioned the financial oversight relative to that $55 million a year that we should be getting, so that those $55 million a year can go towards streets, can go towards more police officers, can go towards fire stations, like on the east side. That's one of the fastest growing part of the city, so it's not neglected, which it was forgotten for several years, over a decade, if not 2 decades, in terms of the growth that was happening exponentially out there. But Ms. Hernandez made a really good point too in terms of the planning. And we're one of the fewest cities in the state of Texas, largest cities, that doesn't have frontage roads. And you as realtors would think that that's very beneficial, because you can do more retail, you can do more development. And the frontage roads are those roads alongside highways, right? On interstate. You just got the interstate. You really can't get, you don't have a frontage road that then has that development that you see in other parts of the state. So that's an oversight. That's a planning oversight. The other thing, since she mentioned planning, the way that things were designed relative to the floods that take place here. You know, typically you take that into consideration when you're planning a city, and that wasn't planned. So that kind of speaks to their points about professionalizing this position and professionalizing the city in general. So those things that you're thinking, why didn't the city think of that? Well, they didn't. And so now we're correcting a lot of those things because we have a plan to address a lot of these issues that have been either neglected and or there's been oversight, lack of oversight in some of those instances. Now, I said that we have almost 7,000 people when you count our part-time employees. These are some of the leadership team that report directly to me, that help us manage those individuals. According to the charter, the department heads also report to me, have them reporting through this structure right here, and these folks here help lead your city. Now, as far as I mentioned that we have a plan and that's important. Now, we've updated the plan twice since this council's been on board, but we've also had another update before that, right when they got on council. And I say this council because this council's been very, very aggressive in terms of getting you services and getting more results for each of their districts, which means you have better services. And I know you can see, and I know there's more improvement we need, and I know we've been through a lot. We've been through immigration crisis. We've been through an August 3rd hate crime. We've been through the pandemic. All right. We've been through a lot, and there's more coming, right? We don't know what's coming. And so that's the reason why it's very, very important to have a strategy when it comes to finances, when it comes to how do you plan for the things that are unforeseen. We didn't foresee an immigration crisis. We didn't know that was coming. Neither did you. And we had to react to that, right? We didn't foresee an August 3rd hate crime, somebody traveling 11 hours and killing 23 of our beautiful people here. We didn't see that, right? That just came out of nowhere. And the pandemic was a world event that affected everyone. Now, a great example of what they talk about professionalizing this and how the council did an amazing job during that process. When the pandemic hit us like it did everyone else, we were the most infected city on the planet, not just in the United States, on the planet per capita. That sounds very scary, right? At the time, it was very scary. Everybody had a lot of questions. They kept us through 11, 12-hour marathon meetings asking every single question you could think of. And they challenged us to be better, right? And the results are that we have the highest vaccination rate of anybody in the United States. We're like 11 or 12% ahead of the average, and we're 16% ahead of the state average. Now, whether you believe in vaccines or not, that's not the point. The point is, when you look at that, when you look at benchmarking ourselves against others in the industry, and we compare ourselves to cities, and we do that all the time. And people always say, well, we don't care about what's going on everywhere else. We care about what's going on here. I understand that. But we also need to have a benchmark to say, look, we are doing this well. I mean, I'd hate to see if we were number 2 or number 3. Right? Because then some of that feedback would be like, whoa, yeah, they're right. We need to do better because we could be better. But even if we're number 1 in certain areas, we still can get better, right? And so we're constantly looking at how we can continuously improve. The strategic plan keeps us focused, keeps the council focused. This strategic plan has survived 3 iterations of changes on council. We have a totally new council now than what we did in 2014. And yet they believe in this because they get results out of it. They get your input out of it. And what happened during this process, council was extremely involved, and they said, look, we want more stakeholder input. So they caused us to create what's called Communities of Excellence, which we're the only city in the state of Texas who received an award for that. And we're also recognized at the national level relative to Communities of Excellence because we work so well with other entities. That EDA grant that I mentioned to you earlier, that $100 million grant, that happened as a result of our strong partnership, not only with Congresswoman Escobar's office, but with UTEP. The pandemic and the reason how we got so good at that, we had a strong relationship with Jacob and UMC. We did LSS projects together, Lean Six Sigma projects together. And so when we started and we had those 3.5-hour waits and we got it down to 5 minutes, that's significant, isn't it? Because you don't want to wait 3.5 hours to get tested. And so we got better in that process because we were very introspective in how we viewed what we did. And that stakeholder input made this iteration of the strategic plan even better. And that's a result of the council's pushing us to be better. Now, talking about being better and having a good plan, the strategic plan has helped us be more comprehensive. We look at the entire city. You know, when I started in 2014, one of the biggest things was that you're only focused on downtown. The only thing City Hall focuses on is downtown. They don't care about our part of town. These are the projects that have been done throughout the entire city. Almost 500 projects since the strategic plan has been put in place that's hit all parts of the city. Now, this is significant because like in District 5 and District 3, the east side, they have been ignored or felt like they had been. And they had examples of how they've been ignored. And so we have examples now how they haven't been ignored. We have the Beast of the East, if you're familiar with that, a multi-generational recreational center, state-of-the-art. It's got a 50-meter pool. It's got a diving well. It's got a water park. It's got a spray park. It's got a 30-plus acre park development that's planned out there and is being developed. You also have multi-dimensional complex for soccer. And that's on the east side. The other thing that you have now is the East Side Regional Command Center that's broken ground that's going to be constructed on the east side. You also have an East Side Fire Station that's broken ground. It's happened because of these ladies right here, of their focus on the plan, their commitment to the plan, and them saying we want the whole city to have this kind of attention, not just downtown. They made that happen. We executed it, but it was because of their vision, because they have a vision and they stick to the vision. And then the values that we have in terms of like the code of conduct, you know, and them being respectful to staff and not beating them down to get a result. They don't have to beat them down. You know, we treat each other with respect. We have a vision that we work towards, and we have a mission that we work toward accomplishing every single day. Now, the number of projects that I mentioned, these are some that have happened throughout the city in these areas, whether it's facility improvements, parks and recreation, transportation. These are the 455 projects that have been done since the strategic plan has been put in place. We've also done almost 500 streets. That's very, very important. Now, the sad part of that is there wasn't a whole lot of streets getting done before that. And so when you have a plan and you have a good methodology, when you have good training in place and you execute that type of work, you get these kind of results. You have more product on the ground. And that map signifies or represents all that green is where the streets improvements were being done throughout the city. Now, the council's very, very big on supporting economic development. Our wages have gone up by almost 20%. That was a priority for them. That's a good thing. The other thing is that they've really have helped in terms of supporting incentives that have happened. Because of that, over $250 million goes to other entities, other taxing entities that don't participate in that incentive. But for that incentive, that wouldn't have happened. And so when you see West Star come up, you see West Star in downtown, the largest building in the city that was built here not too long ago, that happened because of an incentive. Now, the ones that can't participate in that is a school district. So they got 100% of the taxes. So when we talk about $268 million going to other taxing entities because of what the council did, that's how they're supporting keeping your taxes low by helping other parts of the city that are taxing entities, because we only represent 29% of the dollar that you pay for, or 29 cents of the dollar. So every dollar that you pay in taxes, you're only paying us 29 cents. The other 71 cents goes to everyone else. That's the school districts, that's the county, that's UMC, that's El Paso Community College. So again, this represents having a plan and getting these streets done. And these are the type of jobs also that are supported as a result of the capital improvements that have been put in place since 2012. So over 42,000 jobs that we support, and it helps support this economy, helps support your industry, because these people that have jobs are buying homes. And so this is the kind of things that council does for you on your behalf on a daily basis. Now, I'm going to talk about how the council's future focus. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hernandez to talk about some of the other things on a financial focus, but some of the future focus that they have really honed in on during the strategic planning process was advanced manufacturing being one of those things, the communities of excellence partners wanting more more activity there like they saw during the pandemic, during the immigration crisis, during the August 3rd event. And then these are some of the results that I mentioned. I talked about the grants. I talked about some of the focal points in some of the areas relative to advanced manufacturing. And so we got 13 million for international bridges in the airport. And we also had a $12 million grant at the Ysleta Port of Entry. The other areas they've asked us to focus on is talent management, again, our workforce, as well as on a bond package. I told you about the bond package in November, where we have 90% of it going to streets, 8% to parks, and 2% to climate action plan. And then also helping with homelessness. I know that a lot of cities have issues with homelessness. We've really attacked that head on. We have a problem here too, but I think ours isn't as bad as everyone else because we have a plan to address that. So that's my portion of it. I will answer any questions that might come up, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hernandez to talk about our financial focus.
Great job. And I do want to mention from Mr. Gonzales, City Council took a lot of heat to retain Mr. Gonzales, but I think, I felt a strong obligation to ensure that we kept not only one of the greatest Latinos entrepreneurs, as well as a public administrative professional. I'm very proud that we took that decision to keep him here, because in the deliverables, you will see the new monies that we've been able to bring to our community have been a direct result of process improvement and strategy that he and his team has been able to execute. So we're really lucky to have a professional in our community who is going to take our community forward. I think I gave you a new title as an entrepreneur, but I know you do some work behind the scenes. So I'm just going to give you credit for that as well. And then as it relates to Representative Salcido, I'm really proud to see her grow. I'm one of your senior members of council. Been really proud to see her grow in her role. She is on track to make sure that the Upper East Side, she has been doing an amazing job. So I've been very proud to see you grow in your role. So we talked about the 50s, what's happened. We've been one of the greatest economies in the United States. If you look at the historical trends of the way our tax rate was, and then the revenues that we have received, there has been concerted efforts to not use any of your tax dollars to make a better community for El Paso. We have seen a further deterioration in our streets and our infrastructure. I feel, y'all, looking at this and being in this role for so long, there have been concerted efforts to keep El Paso in this mindset of, pobrecitos, we can't afford it. Pobrecitos, we can't do that. But we have to be our own champions. We have to be the ones that put us on the map and elevate each other by making sure we're making those tough decisions and investing into our infrastructure. You're starting to see that now because we're in catch-up phase. We're in a state of disaster of our roadways. How do we get here? I get all the shots all the time. I know you do, getting calls. I just got text messages this morning. It's raining. You see a lot of puddles. You're starting to see all the potholes come up. That is incredibly frustrating. I'm your youngest member of council. I'm 35 years old. This problem has been the same problem since I was born. We have to do something about it. We have to fix it. There has been concerted efforts for decades of neglect, decades of no funding for your infrastructure and your public safety, and now we are catching up. It's unfortunate because we're seeing this really interesting, bizarre, unprecedented levels of inflation and interest rates as a direct response to the pandemic. But now is the time that we really need to invest, because the decisions that we make today are going to be what you see in the next 10 to 20 years, because government works a little bit slow because we're required to meet all of these state standards and government standards. So for example, if the bond is approved, we look at this over a 10-year period. You won't see the fruits of that investment until 5 to 10 years down the road. So these decisions today make a lot of sense for the future. Creating new revenue sources. The city of El Paso, you've never seen headlines. City has a grant from the federal government. City gets grants from the state of Texas. You've never seen that before in recent history because there was never anybody behind the scenes with the Metropolitan Planning Organization. That's your transportation policy board for the region. You've never seen your city managers do any of that because we've always had a form of government that was more willing to sacrifice infrastructure for votes because you want to stay in office. That is not the way we should govern. Now you have new sources of revenues, and now they're not your property tax dollars. They're funding from the state and from the federal government, and you're going to start to see more news on that. So we're utilizing best practices, we're achieving cost savings, and we're doing that with the finite dollars that we receive. So let me put this into context for you. City of San Antonio, if you look at their budget, they have twice the budget that the city of El Paso has. They have over $2 billion. The city has 1.2 of that 1.2 billion. We only have about 500 million that we operate your day-to-day services, your basic services like your police and fire, making sure that you have city employees to answer the phone, and we're providing those basic services to you. Well, we're just as big as San Antonio, but we have half the funding that they do. So that is how efficient your El Paso government is that for every dollar they're spending for the same services, we're spending 50 cents. We are more efficient with less revenues for our community because we recognize we don't have the revenues and we don't have the opportunity to continue to shift the burden to taxpayers. We have to be more efficient with your dollars, and that is the process that Mr. Gonzales keeps talking about. There was so much waste, there was so much time spent. You know, I hear this funny thing all the time. If you look at a construction project and you see like 4 people looking at something on the street and you're just like, why are there 4 people out there working on that one thing? Just put one person out there. Where's their supervisor? Don't you get frustrated? That is exactly what we have seen in our administration for years, for decades. It was waste of time, waste of resources. There really wasn't a strategy or plan. And so this process changes that. And we can't just change it. I can't just unilaterally decide, well, I don't want to save money, Mr. Gonzales. I want to put multi-million dollars into fixing parks. Well, that's going to be a shock to the taxpayer. So we have to have a plan to ease into these investments so it doesn't hurt too much. We're also increasing our fund balance, and I can get in that too in a minute. So I talked about new revenues. Those new revenues are not just saying, hey, we're going to charge you more in your taxes. Those new revenues are a direct result of putting dollars aside so we can match dollars from the federal government and then applying for new federal funds and state funds. And then we talked about, well, there's more efficiency. Well, with more efficiency comes with savings. And so because of those efficiencies and savings, we've been able to yield $267 million. Years ago, every government, we have to have audits. We have to make sure that we are being held accountable to the taxpayer. Well, 6 years ago, before that, what was it, 21 findings? We had over 21 findings. That is significant. That is problematic. That means that you have something happening at City Hall and there's no oversight. For 6 years straight, we have had 0 findings. That is a direct testament to this council, to the mayor, and to the administration, Mr. Gonzalez's, because we are taking these matters seriously and they should be taken seriously. No findings, that's incredible. Your transit system, man, Sun Metro for some time was operating in a deficit. It was red every year. You're seeing a decline in ridership. You're not seeing any investments. You're not seeing any new buses. Have you all seen those really nice Brio stations, the beautification of the lighting, the landscape, new shelters, the artwork? We are now operating not only in the green, but we're on track to expanding mass transit across this community in a more efficient way that is going to listen to the data, but also promote that we need to start using more transit. Yeah, we're going to come to the point where it's going to be unbearable on the highway. So we need to be prepared with our infrastructure as well. 23 million turnaround at the airport, Butterfield Golf. I was devastated when I heard you were going to shut down the golf course during the pandemic. Oh no, golf players came out from everywhere. Well, the golf course has been operating in a deficit. Every year we were subsidizing over $1 million, right? Over $1 million for a golf course. Why are we subsidizing a golf course $1 million? Our golf course should be operating not only in the green, but it should be bringing in more money so we can continue to maintain So now, as a direct result of processes, looking at how we can change things, looking at new vendors, now we've seen a turnaround, and now it's going to be bringing in more revenues. So that also a direct testament to strategy. TxDOT reimbursements, fund balances have doubled. TxDOT doesn't give you money if you don't apply for it. TxDOT doesn't, the state of Texas does not give you dollars if you don't have a plan, a design, environmental studies. It really is, if you don't use it, you lose it scenario. So you have to be prepared with plans so that you can have better infrastructure. Now, what I wanted to mention about the police and fire is that a lot of people don't know this, but police and fire have associations. They kind of act like unions. And the city of Paso has to enter into contracts with your police associations and with your your fire associations. Those contracts are what set their salaries, their benefits, their step increases. Those are binding, and we have to every year make sure that we give those dollars. 60% of your total general revenues today are going to police and public safety, police and fire. That leaves me with what, about 40% to do everything else, to do all your streets, to make sure that your planning department is staffed. Well, remember we talked about there has been several efforts to decrease your tax, to not increase your taxes, to keep the tax rate stagnant. And as a direct response, you saw a straight decline on the number of officers and firefighters that we had. So our commitment is to make sure that we have more police officers. Right now, you can call the police department. Let's hope that never has to happen. Let's say it's a priority one call. Those are, active burglaries, domestic violence, something of really grave urgency. You can expect to wait almost 17 minutes. 17 minutes when you are in an emergency. It is life or death situations. These decisions that we're making today is going to be what protects you and your community. You've seen a rise in crime. You've seen a rise in gun incidents. And this is happening across the nation. Our community and this council is prepared to make those investments to increase the number of academies, to make sure that we have police officers on the street, but also we have to have a culture of respecting our public safety officers. That has changed, and we're trying to change that by working with our youth. Process improvement also, we've saved hours and hours of time, 240,000 hours. Believe it or not, we have some requirements in our city charter that mandates us to have paper copies of every ordinance and decision we make at council. We got to change that. There's some things that don't make sense in the city charter. We'll send that to the voters in May of 2023. But with innovation of technology comes with savings in your, as well as with the paper and things of that nature. There's savings of 3.4 million there. Savings and cost avoidance. Everyone says, well, if you have so much savings, you have so many cost avoidance, well, why don't you give those $21 million back to the taxpayer? Well, you'll see that we need those savings for this reason. We have a rainy day fund. Before I started council, it was not very, very high. In 2004, we had 9 operating days. So for example, if tomorrow I had no revenues, my rainy day fund in 2014, I can operate your city for 9 days. That was problematic. There was no efforts to continue to put money into your rainy day fund. And why does it impact you? It impacts you, like every one of us have a credit score, right? Hopefully you'll have good credit. If not, it's okay. You have time to fix it. Well, the city of El Paso, we have a AA bond rating. Our bond rating is essentially our credit score. Our bond rating is what's going to determine what our interest rates are when we issue out bonds. So we're not at the highest level. We're trying to get there, but one of the steps to get there comes with fiscal responsibility. You have to demonstrate to your bond raters that you can get at least 90 days. That is the goal. That is the golden standard. We want 90 days of operating in our rainy day fund, and we're almost there. Just Tuesday or Monday, how much did we put? A total of 10, 20? 21 million into restricted rainy day funds, restricted accounts, and that is what's going to continue to grow your overall operating days. If we can get to the 90-day number, the magic number, and we can also demonstrate some other requests that the bond raters have made, I'm confident that our bond rating from a AA can go to a plus. AA plus, and hopefully in the future a AAA. I'm being too ambitious, but we have to have a vision and goal. Now, sorry, I don't want to go into too much detail because still the thunder. But when I came to council, can you believe in 2017 that there were no dollars set aside at all for streets? That was in 2017. What do you mean there was no dollars set aside for streets? That's a number one thing. That's a number one request that I get. Fix my street, please. Fix my street. Well, as a response to that, the council then decided to implement what we call as Paygo Funds, but essentially it's a more equitable way in order to pay for streets. Currently, in 2017 and before, the burden was on the taxpayer owner. But you know everyone drives streets. Every single person in El Paso drives on our streets. But only the taxpayer was paying for the maintenance and upkeep of your street. That is too much burden on just a taxpayer. There had never been funding set aside for that. So what we did, and what I feel is more equitable, is that we implemented what we call a franchise fee, and that's on your water bill. It's about $3, $4. That's what you pay every month. Renters pay that money. Apartments pay that money. You get a water bill, you are paying a franchise fee, and that dollar is set aside into a restricted budget, and those dollars are going to your streets. Here's the catch. It's not a lot of money. $7 million can get us 50 to 60 streets. It's not enough money, so which is why we've made a decision. We got to send it to the voters to decide if you all are willing to give us the funding so that we can start fixing more streets. So now we have that pay aside, Paygo money. It's about $10 million. It's restricted just for residential, and it's restricted just for collector roads. An example of a collector road, Edgemere. An example of residential street are the streets that connect to Edgemere. An arterial road, change that.
These homes are more affordable and for you to be able to help your with the help of everything that's going on with your utilities. So I know Mr. Gonzales touched base on this about we are 29% of your dollar, and we are trying to basically manage that 29% of your dollar and address all the needs that we have. We have we provide all the street maintenance and the services. But it also includes the parks, the recreational centers, the senior centers, pool splash pads, I mean, the list goes on. You know, we're trying to be very efficient with 29% of the dollar that you all give us. And I mean, more than anything, I'm looking at ways that we all, as every taxing identity from the dollar, for us to work together so that we're not duplicating services and be able to deliver more service to the community, whereas we're all kind of doing two things at once and we're not getting really the right result. It continues, of course, more departments that we address, just to kind of give you more perspective. Of course, it's the public health. We dealt with the whole COVID-19, which we are definitely set precedents of being the leaders in the state. And also we do the, including the trash, the recycling, and not to forget again, the fire, the police, the 911, the ambulance services. And so we definitely do a lot with this 29%, and we try to be more effective for you. Going into here, I know that you all, this has been something that's been in front of you all. The City Council did approve the largest tax rate decrease in 35 years. And I know that when you look at the formula of your taxes, we are only one part of it. The Central Appraisal District is the other, and we have seen the challenges with those values going up, right? And so you have a two-part place, right, where sellers are very excited for that, right, that their values went up. And they can sell their properties, right? Their investments that you all sold many years ago. And then you, of course, have these buyers that are buying at a very high price, right? So it's one of those double-edged swords. It's what side are you on? But we're trying our best to address and look at things a way as to be able to minimize the tax burden on the taxpayer. And I know that was it a tune of 20 million of savings. And I wanted Mr. Gonzales to kind of touch and bring it all home from here.
I think that there's a lot of questions because the values have gone up. The CAD, the Central Appraisal District, sets that up. They are a function of the state. And so we don't have any control over the Central Appraisal District. So when they set the rate, what we can do is on the values that come in, it's in our case, we're at 91.7 cents. Excuse me, 90.7, almost at 91 cents. And so what the council wanted to do is give some of that value increase back to the citizen. Said we taken all those values and not reduced the tax rate, we'd have taken in $20 more million. So by going to 90.7 or going from 90.7 down to 86.2, we're taking $20 million less. Now you might be thinking, well, lower it some more. Well, there's a lot of additional things that were approved by the voters in 2012 that I'll give this example. I haven't used this in a while with council, but I think everybody understands it and resonates with them. We have a lot of skinny horses that haven't been fed very well at the city, whether it's in the police department, the streets, whether it's in facilities that need a paint job, need to be torn down, need a new facility. I think you know what I'm talking about. Those are skinny horses. They haven't been fed very well. And then you got new horses that we brought on, like what I mentioned earlier, like the East Side multi-generational recreational facility. That's a brand new horse. You want to feed it, right? You don't want the brand new horse that you just bought not to be fed right. So that's the challenge. So some of the value that did go up, we're keeping some of that, right? Because we went from 90.7 to 86.2, didn't go down further than that. That's 4.5 pennies. And that's what it means when it said that that's the largest tax decrease in 35 years. That's a factual, truthful statement. Now, it's also factual and truthful that the values still went up, so we're going to pay more. That is factual, and that is correct, and that is truthful as well. So that's the both sides of that coin. So there's no smoke and mirrors here. It is what it is in terms of the fact that the values have gone up exponentially. Now, we haven't seen that in El Paso like other cities have seen it. You've got the Friscos of the world, the Planos of the world, Austins of the world. They've gone up 12, 13, 15% for the last 10 years. Now, they can only max out at 10%, as you know, by state law. So you only pay up to 10%. But we've now seen it at 13%. We had been seeing it at 1.5% for several years. So it's like an anemic value increase. That's very, very a long time, almost a decade. And then last year, I think it was 4.5%. So we've seen like it kind of jump up a little bit. This last one from 4% or whatever up to 13, that's a huge jump. So council said we need to take a huge jump as well. and decrease the taxes significantly so that people understand we're also doing our part, that they're doing their part. But again, it's a tough subject because there's still value growth, right? But again, that value growth is paying for the new horses. You can pick your horse, whether it's on the east side, a recreational facility, a 50-meter pool, or whether it's the Mexican American Cultural Center, the Children's Museum that's coming in. Now, I'll tell you, on the Children's Museum, the council directed us, hey, go make a good deal there. So we worked on a good deal that they helped champion, where they pay the private sector 2/3 of those costs. We don't have that deal for any other museum or art facility. That's significant, because if it costs, let's say, $3 million to operate that facility, the private sector is paying for $2 million. We did the math on that. You're getting your money back on that bond in about 20 to 25 years because of that deal that was structured, because we're not paying those operating costs over the long haul. So that's what she means, Ms. Hernandez, when she made those points about processes, systems. When I made the point, when Ms. Salcido says that, those are the things that we're paying attention to. We're not letting $55 million slip right out from under us on sales tax anymore. Okay, that's like an example of that, where we're paying attention to what we need to pay attention to, because that's what you want from us. That's what you should demand from us, that we should pay attention. We should have oversight. They should have oversight. And we're telling you that they do. Do you want to continue? Or you want to? Okay. This shows just what we've got that kind of repeats what Ms. Hernandez had talked about with regard to the $10 million that we've got now for street resurfacing that is on an annual basis. Now, the council has made it a goal to reduce the debt. This helps reduce the debt, because if we had to fund this $10 million, you'd have to go sell $100 million of debt to have $10 million a year for the next 10 years. And then you got to pay that interest rate on that $100 million over 20 years. So it ends up being $130, $140 million, as opposed to, no different than when you mortgage a house, right? You know, a $300,000 house ends up costing you what, $500,000 as opposed to 300. So yeah, so that's the example I would give you in terms of what they're looking at. And then the money in next year's budget, we're going to increase the number of police officers and firefighters. This is the net increase, because that slide that Ms. Hernandez showed you, that graph, we barely last year got to the same number of officers that we were at 20 years ago. Now, that slide she showed you does show an increase, and that is true. But we took the years from, if I can see this, 2008 to 2016, there was a decrease of 118. And so now we've increased it by 173. So from that number to 118, you know, it's a net increase in that time frame of what, 50 some odd, like 53 or 54, something like that. So it really kind of tells you what the city in the early 2000s wasn't paying attention to. And that's what she meant about making decisions because it's popular as opposed to making the right decisions for you. That's the reason a lot of things that people complain about, I agree with. When they say it, I'm like, you're exactly right. I'm not arguing that point. And that's the reason why we're doing this, this, and this. So that's how I respond to whenever they say those kinds of things. Now, this is, I think, our last slide. Then we'll open it up to questions. We have to stay very competitive with the workforce. I told you about the wages going up. Also, we have this COVID phenomena, you know, about people working or not wanting to work. You've heard that, right? It's tougher. You heard that from Everest Homes, you know, how it's difficult to hire. It's not about the money. You know, the council constantly tells us, well, we'll give you more money for Sun Metro. We'll give you more money for the budget. No. It's that people want more money. I've even told staff just as early as yesterday, I said, hey, this additional pay we're giving to folks, you need to map that in as a future cost. And we need to remind council that's a future cost too, that you're not paying attention to. Right. And I don't mean that with any disrespect. What I tell council is like, we got to pay attention to this as well. It's just one more thing. So I sound like I worry a lot. I worry for the council, so maybe they don't have to. They still worry, but we try to take care of those things so that we address the question before it's even asked. So that kind of concludes what we had to say. It kind of tells you what a council form of government does. It tells you and explains what we're doing on a daily basis. We've shown how we've saved a lot of money. We've shown how we've also brought in outside money. We also have shown how we're spending your money. I think that's the most important thing. I think you have more streets today than you had in 2014. You have a better downtown today than you had then. And by the way, we got about 60 million from the state, and that didn't exist before. We were able to change the state legislation. In the previous city that I was in, we did a new law that we took to the state that we wanted them to pass, and they passed it. And they said that was a crazy idea. I said, well, I don't care if it's crazy. Can we do it? So we were able to do it. And the city of El Paso did not jump in on that. And I remember telling our staff to call them, because we called all the big cities because I didn't want them to run us over. This was when I was in the city of Irving. So we got that passed, which was a state rebate tax. The way that works is, what we told them is, but for that rebate tax, we're not going to be able to develop this really nice hotel next to our new convention center in Irving, because we were doing it on virgin property in the urban center, right? So it makes sense, right? The state were like, no, that's the fiscal note. That's going to impact us. Well, listen, if you don't do it, you're not getting it. But if you do it and you give us that rebate for 10 years, which by the way, it's 6.25%. That's how much they charge us. Yeah, state gets away with murder. We need to hold them accountable, right? They get a lot of money from us on the hotel tax. So for 10 years, they rebate that to us. We then rebate it to the developer. That's how the Plaza Hotel happened. That's how the Camino Real happened, and now it's Paso del Norte. And that's the reason all that renaissance you see in the downtown did not happen by accident. Got that 60 million from the state. We're pouring back into those developments, and now you're seeing a downtown like you've never seen before. Right? So these things, this plan and how we execute the plan and how we hold ourselves accountable to it, how they hold us accountable because they listen to you, is getting results. So this is what we've been doing. We got more of this coming. Like Mr. Hernandez said, we have more announcements with regard to a lot of these grants that we talked about. Talked about that EDA grant. We feel like we got some good news coming there. I can't tell you more than that, but we feel like we got some good news coming on that. And that's going to help us with advanced manufacturing at the airport, which is going to drive wages up, which is going to increase the ability to have higher paid jobs here, which is going to help you sell more homes. So that concludes our presentation. We'll open it up for questions.
Well, I'll take that. Because I don't know who the question's going to be.
First of all, thank you for coming. We appreciate your time. I've got a whole page of note observations that you mentioned. Love the idea of the solar. As far as using it, I live off of Edgemere Park, and they put up, 200 lots 3 years ago, and none of them are solar. And to me, it was just a huge missed opportunity. So thank you for that. I'd like to challenge you more to work with TxDOT on some of the medians and stuff like that. And then a question, I know staff is increasing. After the pandemic, a lot of large organizations, including the Real Estate Commission that I sit on, a lot of people are working off-site, working from homes and doing some, saving some space like that. Is the city exploring that, leaving some, working virtually and stuff to maybe offset some space and some future challenges there?
Great points. And with the TxDOT, we actually have to pay for the maintenance now. They turn that over to us. And so that's another unfunded mandate, by the way. I mean, they're very much acting like England, right? In the 1700s. And that, they're making us do it's just a true statement, right? And so that gets me going, and it gets the council going too, because that's like me saying, I'm not going to take care of parks anymore. You neighborhood associations, that's your responsibility. You'd be like, are you crazy? So that really has gotten our goat. But with regard to beautification efforts, if that's what you were headed with that, we have gotten in with TxDOT. The council's gotten on TxDOT. And I know because of what you read about in Frisco, whenever I was down there, they told me that TxDOT allows them to do the design for them there in that city. So I know, having come from Irving, like in Irving, they kept wanting us to take over the maintenance. I said, no, I ain't taking over that maintenance. I said, I'll take it over if you gold plate it, meaning you improve the whole thing, which was $80 million. You go do that, I'll take it over. After you turn it over to me, gold plate it. We never took over maintenance. I don't know if they're doing it now, but here, that's how we're treated. That gets me going, right? I mean, I have a chip on my shoulder about our El Paso and how we get treated sometimes from other parts of the state, because I know how other cities get treated. I know, fact, I know. Relative to the work at home and things like that, we have continued that to some degree. And we've done it for the space requirements, and we've done it also because we're 1,000 short right now. We're $1,000 short at the city. That's why we have $1,000 bonus. If you know anybody who wants to go work, we give them $1,000 bonus if they come work for us, because we have to hire over 1,000 people. That's how many people we're down right now because of COVID. So we certainly don't want to upset our current workforce because of like childcare needs and things of that nature, and because of how COVID has really changed people's mindset. And quite frankly, the one benefit I think out of COVID is the whole Teams and Zoom. It's very efficient. Sometimes you actually work more whenever you use that stuff, because I'm sometimes working till 8 or 9 on a meeting, as opposed to before, I could go home at 6:30 or 7 and you'd be done. But now they get you. And then, why didn't you answer? And you're always accessible. So yes, sir, we're doing that.
Okay. I knew TxDOT had us do the maintenance. We also do the design.
We don't do the design.
Okay,
I'd like to be involved in the design. I'd like to be able to have a bigger voice in the design. And we have pushed them, embarrassed them, cajoled them, everything to try to get more input in that process.
I am equally as frustrated about the solar lighting at Edgemere Park. It's my district, by the way. So you're aware, when I came into office, that project was already underway. It was already designed and planned. Conduit was already prepared. Orders of the bollard lighting was already on their way. There was no way I can stop it. So it was a matter of, do we lose the resources or do we just go forward with the plan? But we did fix the Playa Drain trail that starts over by Escaleta Park and it goes all the way down to Riverside. That's all solar, because I insisted we need to start moving towards solar panels. And in that Edgemere Park, there's a lot more trees. So there was a concern as well about not getting the appropriate amount of sun to make it lit the entire night. But I agree with you, lost opportunity. This plan, if it's approved by the voters, could change that. It would require us to do that.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think it was also a missed opportunity to bury all those lines too. That park was shut down for 18 months. Could have very easily buried all those lines.
Talking about the electrical lines?
Right.
That's one thing we've talked to council.
Missed opportunity.
We've talked to council about that in executive session, about burying lines in strategic locations, and that it'll make something more beautiful, especially, as near housing and things of that nature, but certain intersections, if you buried, and you can retrofit, to her point and your point, you can go back and retrofit. Now, we did the longest corridor, like in the last city I was at, and back then it was unheard of. And so we have a spirit of wanting to do more of it, because it would cost us less, because we have to pay for that street light electricity.
That was it.
Over here.
You mentioned twice bond election. Could you tell us more about that, when it's coming up?
Yes, it's coming up in November. I think it's November 3rd. I think it's the election date. It's November 8th. Thank you. I think I got November 3rd in my head because that's when my son was born. That's his birthday. But November 8th, and the 100% of the projects, it's 90% of it, which is roughly $247 million, is for streets. The $20 million for parks, which is an all abilities playground and a lot of the improvements like shade covers and just maintenance items for the parks, and then $5.2 million for climate action plan. The climate action plan would be things like demonstration projects like solar lighting, maybe have the solar lighting retrofitting in certain areas, and or making facilities more solarize those. And again, you get to vote on that.
Okay, and what does that mean to us in terms of a property tax increase?
I just recently did studies on this. So the average over the lifespan of the bonds would be an average impact to homeowners of $63. That is a sliding scale. That'll be the highest over the term of the entire bond. You wouldn't see that until fiscal year 24, which would be next year. You would see the first raise of about $2, and it goes from $2 to $9 every year. So there is a sliding scale, but the average over the lifespan of the bond would be $63. And we're required to educate the voters on that.
When she says the lifespan, that means at the height of it, right? It would be the total of 63. Now I will say this. We're reducing the tax rate, like we said, 4.5 pennies. That's with the 2012 package. That's with some improvements the council approved in 17 and 18. So with some bond items, and then in 2019, and then it's 2022. So this year we've shown, and the last 2 years we've shown that we've absorbed those costs. So with those savings, so when people say, where do those savings go? It goes to offset a tax increase. So last 2 years, no tax increase, and we actually reduced the taxes for seniors and the disabled twice. And so this year it will be a tax decrease with still doing the bonds.
Again, what does this mean to our property tax increase? I mean,
It's what she said.
we-
It's what she said. So it's a matter of whether my only point is she's right. And if we're able to absorb it, there might not be an increase in a given year, like this year, where we're reducing it by 4.5 pennies.
because you reduced the rate and now
But the values are still up, like I said. But we were able to reduce it because we had savings and because of the values coming in the way they did, like I said earlier.
so we're looking at overall $63.
That's the average. At the highest point of the model, so you're looking at every year, the highest point could go up to $150. The lowest point would be $2. So it depends on what year. The problem with forecasting this and sharing it with the public is that there's a lot of assumptions you're taking place here. Under this model, we're looking at interest rates of 7%. We're confident when the market stabilizes, we'll be able to go out and refinance that. We can't tell the voters that though. We have to say, this is what our models are showing. At the highest point, it could be $150. At the lowest point, $2 every year, depending on which year. But the average would be $63.
Because we're seeing two issues here today. We've got this UMC bond that they're talking about. And then you've got the city bond, so now we're looking at two hits that we're probably going to present to taxpayers if these bonds pass. Is that right?
So currently, UMC and the commissioner courts, there's no election being called. I think that's the effort today, is let the voters decide so an election will be called. The city of El Paso on Tuesday, yesterday, I don't even know what day today is, 2 days ago. Sorry. I have a newborn, and so sometimes I lose sleep. So we've already called the election. So the voters can expect an election of November 8th of this year. If they're successful in their efforts, I don't think the election will come until May of 2023. I don't want to misspeak though. So the voters will decide in November and then another election in May. Yes, you're right. Their bonds result in increases. The 2019 bond, and it resulted in an increase from the fire and police station. They all result in increases. Once the voter approves that, we have to take that into account in our debt service rate. And that's the overall rate, debt service and operations. That's what makes your entire tax rate. So we look at that, we're well below what the policy requires us to keep below in terms of how much debt we can issue. So in terms of can we afford it? We've done all the formulas. We looked at all the numbers. Yes, we can. We can't afford not to because our streets are deteriorating.
Hey, I'm Chastity Rosales. I'm a realtor and I'm a reserve. I'm a sergeant major reserve in the reserve. So
Thank you for your service.
thank you. And thank you, Tommy, for your service. And thank all of you for your service. I know with the social media world, you get hit. It's crazy. Damn if you do, damn if you don't. But I think what we have there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is when there's no communication and understanding, people insert their own understanding from it. So I think on the property tax situation, I think we have a lack of understanding citywide of what it really is and what it means. And I'm talking about this because we serve, mostly our real estate team serves military families, and that's our concern. Right now, we've almost priced them out to market with property tax and interest rate, which I know you don't control that part, but for them to buy a $250,000 house, it's almost $1,800 right now in El Paso, which is way beyond the average BAH. So that's something I'd love to see us talk about. Is there something in the works of Fort Bliss that, hey, we've got to give them some kind of other special deduction that they can have their 2 or 3 years here that makes it affordable for them to build wealth through real estate? Because right now, it's not an option almost for some of them. Two, as I understand it, because we are residentially rich, right, and we don't have a lot of corporations pouring into us, then the taxpayers carry that property tax burden. And you talk about the other big cities in Texas. Well, let's say Frisco, they're 0.44 tax rate on average. Austin's 1.3. We're at 3.2. So when you're saying, our property tax rate is higher than our mortgage, our car payments. It's crazy, right? So when you say we did a big decrease, we don't see that because we don't understand it. And I think even if you got on and did, a quarterly
town hall meeting that you broadcast. I understand people have to watch that, but as they start getting used to watching that and have the data to then be educated to make decisions, I think that will help, because I didn't understand that until I heard it several years ago when somebody came to speak here. And the second point to that is, we used to be able to say, we had the excuse to say, but we don't pay state income tax. So if we just compare ourselves to our sister states, we still coming out good, right? On the average. But now that's not the case anymore. I don't have that excuse to them anymore. So help me with that argument.
Well, first of all, there's a lot of people moving to Texas for a lot of reasons.
Right.
And you mentioned Austin. I don't think you can find a $250,000 house in Austin.
No.
So
Our
I mean,
250 is excellent there.
yeah. So, and you also mentioned the values and what our tax rate is versus their tax rate. The reason why their tax rate is what it is because they have more value to get from. So the best way I can describe that is whenever my wife and I first got married and had our first home, it was 1,200 square feet. Okay. And so we had a small home. I think it was $55,000, $60,000 house versus having a mansion like in Austin. And let's say some people have big houses here. Let's say it's a $600,000 house. Well, there's more value in Austin than there is here on property.
I get that.
And so we have lower to tax on. So it's kind of a misnomer, and people like, use it because it's true. Hey, your tax rate is 90.7 cents. You're higher than the other cities in the state of Texas. Yeah, but our values are a lot lower. So we have less to tax off of. And then we talked about all that neglect that took place. And then we get all these complaints about streets, police response, about, hey, what about the east side? You forgot about it. I could go on. And I think we did in the presentation. And so we're playing a lot of catch up. And I also told you about how we're hamstrung and that somebody was asleep at the switch in the 80s and 55 million went to the county. And we wonder why we have sprawl. Well, if forget, it's not a city county thing, just so everybody gets it straight. I'm not complaining about that. But it is an explanation. Yeah. The county, if they spend a lot of their money in the outer area, not inside the city, and they have extra 55 million to do that, yeah, it's going to be more competitive. People ask, well, why is Horizon Socorro growing so much? I don't think it's that difficult to put two and two together. I think it's happening because they're being supported with this extra money that they have, that we don't have, that we should have had. So there's a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda. But the bottom line is that there is less that we tax on, so the rate is higher. But the money we get is still less than the other cities. We also, by the way, and Ms. Hernandez didn't mention this, but they also get a huge transfer, Austin and San Antonio, from their electric utility that's owned by the city. Like we used to own, or they still do, in Lubbock. That's where I grew up. And in Lubbock, Texas, Lubbock Power and Light had a big transfer over the general fund. Anytime we didn't want to raise taxes, got a big transfer from the electric utility, which is still from the ratepayers, which is the same taxpayer.
Yeah, it's just different.
So it's just a smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying those other cities are smoke and mirrors, but they have more value to tax off of. So if we have more value, our rate's going to go down, and we're still going to say, yeah, but our values went up and we're still paying. Yeah. That's a valid argument. That's the explanation.
Yeah.
That's the explanation of that. Now, relative to the soldiers, I'm retired military. I think you know that. I have a soft spot for them. And yeah, there's things that we can consider and look at. We're open to doing that. But again, we're only 29% of the dollar. So if we do something, we're only going to impact less than 1/3 of their dollar. So I don't know how impactful that's going to be.
Yeah.
Maybe if there's some kind of bonus fund or something like that, we're willing to look at it from an economic development standpoint. And by the way, we're the most aggressive. Most deals that get done that you read about in the paper, we're doing 90% of the incentive or all of it with the 29 cents. That's how the 268 million is going to everybody.
Yeah.
So we're doing, and the other thing is these utility increases that you mentioned, the council was very aggressive with the electric utility. And by the way, some of the other, they call them interveners. They include things like Walmart, the county, the school districts, but they call them interveners. That kind of cleans up who they are. But they were against what the council was fighting to reduce it. And that was reduced by $40 million, by the way, mainly due to the council. So there's things we're doing not only with the tax rate, but also with the utility costs, also with economic development, that we're doing all we can with the 29 cents we get.
That makes
just
great
wanna add one
sense. But
point. Mm-hmm.
how do we communicate that to the taxpayers? How do we get that message out? Because we're not telling our story. I know there was a lot of grievance with there was a lot of grievances with them retaining you because people don't understand your worth, right? Here we see it. We understand the worth. We see what you're helping them negotiate and they're helping you negotiate. But I don't think we tell that story. I don't think they understand it. They don't understand how intraweb this is. So how do we tell that? So we get them on board so we don't have 4% come because they're saying, oh, screw it, because it doesn't matter anyway. They're going to do whatever they want. That's the story out there we hear. And when I came here, I was like, okay, what do you want to know? Like, we're going to see the city manager day to our population. What do you want to know? The things that they cared about were the dang on weeds. When we getting the weeds up? What they doing to the DA? When they gonna reprimand and get them out for this mishap they just had? Those kind of things.
DA doesn't report to us.
See, that's what I'm saying. They don't understand how this web works. And so now you have all this stuff going out there. Oh, and why did they give $6 million for security for the bus when they could have used that to add routes? Because they don't know, because the story hasn't been told.
Right. That's why it's so important for civic engagement, which we lack dearly in this community. We also lack investigative journalism. And I just want to, because I know you all have these conversations with homeowners. I think it's really important because you hear all the time, well, why is the city giving away money for incentives? Okay, so here's the way it works. What the city does is that we incentivize a company. We only use the portion of the taxes that they're going to pay the city for the city's taxes. So let's say a business comes into our community and says, hey, we want to put $20 million into opening a business. We're going to hire X number of employees. They're going to be competitive wages. We come to the table with our economic development team and we say, over a span of 10 years, you're going to pay X amount of taxes. And within those 10 years, we'll give you a portion back to you, only for the city of El Paso. We're not giving away the school district's money, no one else's. So the reason why we do that is because if they do make that investment and they do hire people and give those competitive wages, that's already contributing to the economy, right? So we want to incentivize that because we know that the only way we can get rid of this concern of too much burden on homeowners, we need to find a way to incentivize businesses so they can continue to open more businesses in our community. The second thing I wanted to bring up is sales tax revenues. Oh my gosh, we've seen so many really, really good sales tax revenues in our community. That is a direct offset to the tax burden. The second thing is that's indicative of a vibrant economy. We are seeing more sales tax revenues, and that's going to keep your revenues, your property taxes down. So the strategy is working. You're seeing more retail. You're seeing more businesses open. That is the way we reduce the tax burden. We're not getting any support from the state. They're giving us unfunded mandates. We have to fix more that they don't want to fix. So the strategy is bring in more business, bring in more competitive jobs. That's why this advanced manufacturing announcement is so critical, because you're talking about an entire new industry for our community.
Thank you. Okay, we've got two more questions because we really need to wrap this up. So if you can make it quick questions and answers, and we'll get this closed up.
A couple of things on the bond issue. And in the past, we had a difficult one that we wanted to put in. One of the strategies that the city used said, look, we want whatever it is, 200 million or whatever. How much was the bond coming up? 200?
It's give me the lying here. Yeah, thank you. 272
whatever the amount is.
No. 272 million.
272 million. What they did in the past was said, okay, here's how the breakdown is. We're going to do Lee Trevino. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And had some priorities out there. So voters had an opportunity to look at and said, because, frankly, if I live on the west side, I don't care about the east side most of the time. Back and forth. I mean, it's, hey, chill. But that's basically the thing, okay? And so if they see how the money is being spent, that there's priority there, that's probably going to be a good thing. But also the bad part about that, though, is that there's some accountability there. So if we pass give you all the 270 million there, we expect that particular street to be done in that kind of a time frame. And if you don't spend it, what are you going to do? You're going to give it back. A couple other things on the bonds is sometimes what we don't realize is we pay government through bonds, okay? We pay the bonds through the tax, because if they need to do something, they can't go to the taxpayers and all y'all in here, we need $270 million, we're going to divvy it up. Give me that check right now. We don't do that. And so that's how that system works. But we've done some bonds 10, 20 years ago that now have been paid off. And so we've got some bonding capacity there. I don't think people understand that. So when they say, oh, you're passing another $270 million worth of bond, well, you know what? We probably paid off a few bonds before then. So the net gain is not quite as big there. So I think that's an important thing to put out.
That's part of the assumptions that Mr. Hernandez talked about. That's factored into our model.
So having said that, one of the bond projects that we spent some money on, we issued on the last go around, is for some type of a facility downtown. Now, I know that's been out of the news for a while. Are we going to call it arena? What are we going to call it? Multi-purpose center, whatever you want to call the building here. And the reason I ask is I've had over the last 3 or 4 years now, and of course, COVID messes up everything, but we can't blame everything on COVID. But I've had 3 or 4 investor groups from out of town wanting to come in. We say, we love the downtown area. Y'all got some cheap real estate down there. You got some beautiful real estate, more iconic buildings than probably anywhere else in the country with the historic tax credits. It's a wonderful opportunity, except I don't want to come in here not knowing if we're going to do something or where we're going to do it, because they have to do their due diligence. And if they're doing their due diligence, assuming that we're going to build an arena or whatever it is in this location, well, then this is the highest best use for what I'm going to do. But now if it goes over here, all of my plans are gone. So I've had at least 3 investor groups say, whenever y'all figure it out, we'll take another look at El Paso, but they moved on to other markets. Where do we stand on that?
Okay, so you said a lot. And one thing relative to the modeling, we also, just to add one more thing to the modeling, is that we've saved $167 million in refinancing debt. Okay, so that's paying attention to your money. So that's happened just by that. And that's just, you should expect that from us. Appreciate the hand clap, but you should expect that from us. And that's the kind of stuff that maybe wasn't getting done as aggressively. The other thing is the ballpark. There's been a lot, sir. I'm glad you mentioned that. I was just about to say that. On the ballpark, we refinanced bonds there and saved almost $20 million. So we've refinanced that bad boy twice. And now that, with the way it was modeled, we're not sending general fund money, which is your property tax, over there. But that the venue district tax is being used to pay off the debt on that, just to be clear. Now I just, I'm getting old, so I just not talk my way out of forgetting what the MPC. Okay, so the MPC, 180 million was done in 2012. There was a back and forth in 2012, the way it was worded. And so there was a lawsuit that was filed, and that's the reason why it's been delayed. Now, I just got back from a work trip to go see other sites, and there's been facilities that have been constructed, believe it or not, where we can maybe get what we want done with the money we've got in the package right now. Just a matter of how we choose to do it. And can we negotiate something with those that are suing us? So that's where we are with that.
Thank you. Last question, because we really need to get this wrapped up.
Tommy, has the city council or the city given any consideration? Jennifer and I live on the east side. Our average tax bill per month is about $1,000. Okay, we live on Gary Player. Have they given any interest or thought again about doing anything or I guess considering taking over Vista Hills Country Club? I know they sold the clubhouse and did that, but is there any interest from the city to engage and sort of say, okay, we'll take over, something like that? Again, our tax bill right now we average at least $1,000 a month. Is what our
it's not my district. I know it's Representative Rivetta, and as you're aware, that area is private property. The acquisition of that would be costly. It could be a future bond election. But what I would hope to see there, and I know there is interest from the community, is a private company coming in, beautifying it, making it, a gem in the community, making sure it's operational for golf courses, for conferences, for events, to the prime stage. But I do recognize that there's private investment that might consider going there, and that's where the city can come in. We may be able to look at an incentive to make sure that happens. But the current cost of that is going to be monumental. It's a lot of water. It would be a big ticket item. I would not feel comfortable at council making a decision just to pay for it. I think either the voters should decide or it should be a private investor.
And I remember that because I was out there when everybody was pitchforks and yelling and everything like that. And I told them a way to get it fixed, and the people didn't want to do it. And if you're familiar with it, it's the neighborhood group, and they have a golf course in the middle of it, and some are paying and some aren't. And I said, well, you need to do a PID, which is a public improvement district. And if you get 51% of the people that live in that zone, then everybody can get taxed proportionally for the value of their home, and then you can keep it up and running. Now, a combination of that, like that could still get done, and what she said could get done. And that would make it affordable for the city and for the neighborhood, and you wouldn't lose that investment. Because right now you have a stranded investment. It's a quality product. You guys are just struggling because some are paying and some aren't because it was done. You kind of are suffering from what I said earlier about the 55 million, and not paying attention. That's kind of what y'all are suffering from. The way it was set up, it wasn't set up with all the governance that was needed and necessary, and all the financial mechanisms in order for it to last in the long haul.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I just want to end on something positive here. The Beast on the East, outstanding job building that facility. I know you West Siders are proud to be from the West Side, but that East Side facility, outstanding. We drive from Cielo Vista to go over there. It opens at 6 a.m. in the morning, and there are people all over that place working out, and it is top notch. Thank you for doing that.
Yes, ma'am. And we told our staff we wanted that to be the best in the state, not just the best El Paso has seen. So yeah, glad. Thank you for your feedback.
That is awesome. I haven't been there yet, but I'm going to.
It actually got an award, and that is in my district, and we needed that. We were neglected for a very long time, so no more neglect. District 5.
You guys did an outstanding job with this. Thank you so much. I appreciate you are always here for us when we call. That does a lot. You have people that give their time to serve our city, and you can't reach them. And you guys have always been available for us, and I just can't express that. And thank you very, very much. I know you have an election coming up soon, so best of luck to you as well. But you said something in your speech, and then I'm going to let Isabel close this out, that hit home to me, because I am the Tree Pack trustee as well. Most of you know that. So I am the liaison between El Paso and Texas Realtors. And Tree Pack is near and dear to my heart. And I know there's some newer people in here, so I want to just take 2 seconds. Yes, and I got to meet you. Good luck and everything. Guys, for those of you who don't know, Tree Pack is Texas Real Estate Political Action Committee. We are not Democratic. We're not Republican. We support candidates who support property home ownership and ownership rights, and they protect realtors. When COVID hit, yes, it was hard. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, we are in so much trouble, because my only household income comes from real estate. And I thought, I'm in trouble. They're shutting everything down. But because of Tree Pack, they got on that phone instantly with our governor. And within days, we were deemed essential. So we were allowed to sell homes here in Texas. But you go across the border to New Mexico, and they could not. They were at a standstill. And that hurts. It hurts the owners that need to sell. It hurt our military and people that were transferring in, and it hurt us. So if you're not supporting Tree Pack, you need to. Your $35 is an investment in your business and in being a property owner, and it helps us get candidates and issues. We have an issues mobilization. Jennifer, you got a tax bill several years ago on your car. Mickey, you probably did too. Doug, you probably did. Michael, we got taxed on our car from the city. Tree Pack came in, and that was gone.
You sure it was the city?
From CAD.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you for the correction.
I just want to make sure we don't tax your car.
It was
like
CAD.
that's a new revenue stream I'm not aware of.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Tommy. I appreciate that. So
I don't want it. I don't
he
want
is
it.
correct. It was from CAD. But Tree Pack came in and stopped it. So please, please, please invest in Tree Pack. We have our last event September the 10th. It is Battle of the I-10. It is going to be a fabulous event. For $40, you get your tailgate ticket. You get to come out. You get food. How many like the food today? He will be catering that event. So the food will be catered by him. There's going to be advertisers with different booths, and it goes for your Tree Pack investment. You hit home when you said, and this is my biggest issue, is participation. If you do not get out and vote, and you don't have a say in what happens, you can't complain. So please get out and vote. It hit me when she said and it's true, we have more people on TikTok than we do voters. That hit home. I wrote that down because it's true and it's a shame. If there's not a huge election going on, people don't come out. And we need you guys to come out. You know, Tree Pack says one last thing, and I'm going to end it. And it's, if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu. So you need a seat at the table, and you need to be out and voting. And I appreciate your time, guys, and I appreciate your time. And I'm going to let Isabel close this out.
Great applause to everybody. Jackie York, our president, Candace, our AE that wasn't able to be here, but she is on live, so everybody say hi. Hi, Candace. We're grateful for all of you that attended. We do have 2 more of these set up. One is going to be October 13th. October 13th is going to be Yvonne Apodaca. She was here. She came to make sure that we're going to behave. And that no, she came to make sure on what the expectation was of her. And so we'll be listening to her. She's a Trek teacher, and she's also going to, she's going to be speaking to us on a lot of do's and don'ts. After that, on November 10th, we will have Trek in town. They will be coming in. That would be the one for yes, Trek Commission. So she will be here. I'm going to say a little something, and I usually don't, but I think you guys are doing a fabulous job. I really do think everything is in the math. Everything is in the math. So if you guys are out there looking for bonds and grants that we can hopefully in the future offset to not be one of the highest taxed cities, that would be what we would benefit from as a city. So I appreciate your hard work. I really think that you guys have the perfect team. Isabel, we have your back. We will be here to make sure that we still see you here in the coming years as our District 5 city rep.
And I'll commit to y'all that myself and the chief financial officer, if y'all have any questions regarding what was brought up earlier about the taxing and what other cities pay, what you pay, we're happy to provide that to you and show you facts relative to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that, and we're going to hold you to it, Tommy, okay? Last, I want to thank you guys for all the efforts that you're doing to help us have a voice and give the city the voice and the right to vote. So if you have any of the petitions, if you could just scroll them to the left or hold them up, Jackie will come around. And with all that, have a great day. Let's go sell some houses, everybody. Thank you.